All right, good morning, good morning. Thank you all for joining us on a really nice Saturday spring day in April. So thanks for coming indoors, albeit hopefully for just a little bit, so you get back outdoors and enjoy this great spring weather. We have, you can see our agenda here today. We've got our treasurer's report. We do have a presentation from the Indian Valley Recreation Parks District. I have an update of just general updates and events and just things that the DFC internally is working on and plans to work on here in the future. And then some schedule of events. Our main sort of topic today is that we're joined by Hanson Hum and Mr. Mike Smiley. They are with the Community Planning Assistance Team. And Tracy Ferguson will give an introduction before they really get started, but they have a report out that they're going to share with us. This was a presentation that they gave to our Board of Supervisors, the County Board of Supervisors last month. And then the steering committee got a brief and an overview of it this past week, and we'll hear it again. And there's definitely plenty in this report that will go beyond these doors and beyond this time here. It's a very robust report, and there's a lot to think about and read and kind of determine what are the best ways to move forward on a number of the recommendations. But it's very comprehensive, and really appreciate that you all are joining us today to explain it in greater detail. So thank you. Next slide, please. All right. The Dixie Fire Long-Term Recovery Group, known as the Dixie Fire Collaborative, is a collaboration of nonprofit, faith-based, local, state, or national organizations that work together to share information and resources that can help address the needs of individuals and families affected by the Dixie wildfire. The stated mission of the DFC is working to fulfill the unmet needs of Dixie Fire survivors and helping to rebuild the communities of Greenville, Indian Falls, Canyon Dam, Warner Valley, and the surrounding areas of Plymouth County. All programs shall support this mission and purpose, and all who work for or on behalf of the DFC shall understand and adhere to that purpose. Thank you. All right, Danny. Danny will present our treasurer's report this month.
Sure, Danny.
Done. Oh, well, we'll start. We didn't get any interest yet for April, so that's short. We usually get down on the 12th of the month. So we didn't have any real change here. On our new changes to grants approved, we've actually moved this from committed to approval. We've got some money, $600,000 to Housing Council. And for the Health and Wellbeing Center here, we've got that $72,481. So this is our total grants is $1 million. This number is wrong. Like Patrick was having a little difficulty at our last meeting. I get to choke on these. $1,884,696.17. Is what we spent. We don't have any new expenditures. We declare here, but our kind of look at here. So our balance is at $999,674. So that's where we get going in the right directions. We're getting these committed to people who need the funds. We have approved actually within the steering committee, the $500,000 to Dixie Fire Canopy, and also the Dawn Institute, $999,000, or $99,000, $99,159. So getting down here, so our total outflow has been $2,637,125, or 86 or 84% of the funds that would come in, we've actually distributed. All right, I'll put this a little closer so we can go ahead to the next slide. So this is just the detail, and I'll try to keep going faster because they want it. But and the reason I really want to go through these and present them here, and then when people go review the presentation online, they see the detail. All right. So this is just the detail. We can go ahead, go forward here. There's no real changes here in the deposits. We didn't have any interesting changes here. Go to the next slide. This is continue. Oh, but this is the live microgrid. So next slide will show. We miss. Actually, the next slide we missed a slide there. That was the third slide. Of the two new approved budget items. There's for the grants. And no new changes here, but and I highlight in blue the actual changes, so there's some technicians, so this was just to our support through February here. Next slide. Oh, here's what I was looking for, actually was here where we have the Dixie Fire Canopy project that Dawn is declaring here the detail where we come up with the totals. All right. And this is, check my math. So 84% of the income has been expended. And to note here, we have $502,000 left. At 503, we can round to 503,000. But that we have 300,000 out there that's kind of in limbo. We've committed to the Roundhouse Council, depending upon if they need it or not. So that could come back in here. All right. Greensville Rancheria, sorry. Yeah. All right. That was a quick.
Thank you very much, Danny. And with regard to some of those grant pieces, I'm going to elaborate not just on the dollar amount later, but specifically what that grant funding is being used for by those organizations. Next, we have Sue Weber with the Indian Valley Recreation and Parks District.
Thanks, Patrick. I was hoping Kaylee was going to do this with me, but he probably got sidetracked. This is a really in-depth update because we're moving forward now. So currently, this is the financial component. We are not, I'm still trying to get from the county the exact amount of the check from the insurance. I also reached out to the insurance, so I'm asking because we need to know the exact amount at the end of the day. When I came in, the IVRPD was sitting on 756,000. So I don't know if it was in the high 700s or 800s, so I'm not sure, but I am looking to get that. We did finally settle our PG&E claim. Happy to say that after the 25% from the law firm, we will be granted approximately 3.1 million. So that is super exciting. We currently, it's a per capita grant. So we have a grant and it's specifically for parks, and it was for $177,500. We're committing $109,826.49 to add a toddler zone down at the park. It was a request by a lot of moms who, if anybody's paying attention in our community, we have a lot of babies. We have 5 pregnant moms that I know of currently. So the toddler zone was requested, and also adding shade at the park. That would leave us with $67,671. Our board just recently committed that, along with $132,326.49 to contribute $200,000 for the upgrading of the ball fields. And that will be a partnership. And I'll explain that more. We received a grant for to add a fitness center and a makerspace with a partnership here at the school through the DFC and the North Valley Community Foundation for $144,969.33. There is at the table a private estate left 3% of their entire estate to IVRPD. That I've been working closely with them because I really want to make sure that the person who left this, we maybe can somehow honor some of her wishes, not knowing her super well. A dog park would definitely be up at the top for this particular grant. So we don't know yet how much that will be. I'm estimating between 35,000 up to maybe 100. So. Okay, this is the project where these are projects that we are currently working on. So after partnering with IVCSD, the Dixie Fire Collaborative, the North Valley Community Foundation, Plymouth Strong, PUSD, and PCS, which we know to be IVA here, we came up with MOUs to be able to add a community fitness center and makerspace here at the school. The fitness center will be in the 2, what used to be the old history classrooms. A wall was removed, and that whole area will be a fitness center. The makerspace is going to be in this room connected to the library. which has a door that leads out to the art room and the culinary room. So the partnership gives IVRPD after school hours access to the library, the makerspace, the culinary room, the art room, and then what will be the fitness center. PCS and PUSD is giving us all the usage space for free. In exchange, our responsibility will be to run the programs. And I want some clarity on this. A lot of you people know me. However, for those who don't, we are not opening the doors while students are here. Our goal will be even to offer some programs for the students right after school. However, anybody who will be employed or contracted with IVRPD and the CSD, because we partner with the HR department, everybody will be fingerprinted, we'll have a TB test. We have to meet all the requirements that you do anywhere else when you're running programs. I think that's it. We are hoping to have a summer camp this year. The next project that is in the works is the toddler play structure. I gave the information of that. That's a partnership with IVRPD and IVCSD. Project 3 is the upgrading of the baseball fields in Greenville, the snack shack. That partnership is with IVRPD, IVCSD, and Greenville Little League. And we're hoping to tie in the DFC in North Valley with the potential of the money, extra money that we need. These projects, project 4 is the Indian Valley Community Pool. We've committed $20,000 to upgrade the facility, to add a solar heating system and beautification of gravel and chips, laying down chips. Things that will be offered are swimming lessons, water aerobics, free swim, and you will be able to rent also. We will be in the next 2 to 3 months looking to hire an executive director, a fitness coordinator, a makerspace coordinator, and a pool manager. These are just potentials that came to the table. We are in conversation with the Legion Hall to potentially create an indoor toddler zone for the community, but there's other arenas that we're looking at too of space. So that's just in the works. The community has come and was asking, apparently in Taylorsville, the pickleball courts are just packed. And so they came to ask, could we potentially have pickleball courts here in Greenville? So that is a lot, as everybody knows, that's a process working with the school, but the ideal place is where the old tennis courts used to be. And then if they give us permission to do that, then IVRPD would support that financially. We're looking, again, just potential conversations. The National Park Service did an incredible job, and I believe you showed some of that before. Did an incredible job on what potentially some green space could be along 89. That's all just in the conversation stage right now. And then we're getting very close to have a brand new website up and running where people who want to attend classes or whatever, everything can be done through the webpage. The next big step we're doing is we are looking to remove funds from the county treasurer. So we had, in order to do that, you had to apply for an EIN number. We have done that, so we're waiting to hear back. And then this is the process. It's very detailed, but it's a memo of intent to withdraw the money. You have to provide a lot of information. The district board has to do a resolution. And then before the board decided that before we move the money from the county into here, we are going to have an auditor do that with the county because for us, it's very convoluted and super hard. So we want to make sure that that's done really clean so that when that money comes, everybody in the community knows what that is. And these are the board members: myself, Kaylee Benz, Joan Carter, Janine, and Jared Morris. If you have any questions, you have any thoughts, you want to recommend something, please, even outside of our board meeting, please direct one of your questions or whatever to any of these folks, because they will be the ones that will be able to give you really good, solid information. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. All right, I think, yep, we're gonna, yeah, okay, so, gentlemen, or actually, Tracy, all right.
Terrific. Good morning. My name is Tracy Ferguson. I'm the Plymouth County Planning Director. I'm happy to be before you again here to announce or to introduce the CPAT team and this implementation strategy. So the report is back here. If you all want to grab a copy, certainly there's a few to take home with you today and to review. So this, in response to the Dixie Fire, a recovery and rebuilding implementation strategy. So American Planning Association is a national planning association. Each state in the nation has a chapter. So we have a California chapter of the American Planning Association, and through that, there are programs. So there's a program called the Planners Emeritus Network, or PIN, and PIN has a branch called the Community Planning Assistance Team, or CPAT. And so CPAT is made up of planning technical professionals, multidisciplinary at very senior levels in their professions if they're active working planners, or also planners that are retired and want to give back to the communities. So throughout the state of California, the CPAT program is active in communities mostly that are underserved. And so, such as Plymouth County. And when there is an identified need, issue, problem, CPAT does approach communities, or in my case, with the Dixie Fire and my relationship to the American Planning Association, being a member, that I proactively reached out to California APA and just being in the planning community, knew Hanson, met Michael and knew some of the others that are on the team, Brian Mooney. So this was spring of 2022. I look back, we had a call at that time, and the timing just wasn't right. Coming off of the Dixie Fire, doing the work in the fall of 21, coming to spring of 22, we just weren't ready. And so a year later, spring of 23, we had another conversation and the timing was right. And so by August of 2023, if you recall, there were activities with both Canyon Dam and Town of Greenville, the Town Center Design Guidelines. There's the Canyon Dam Summary Report, that was LMNOP, Design and Build, and others, the interns in town. So at that time, it made sense to bring in these technical planning professionals to shadow the process that was happening in the county, to listen, to understand, to engage with the community, to go to those meetings and workshops, and then to think about, in recovery, in long-term recovery, what we can be doing to implement different strategies, projects, programs, and so forth. So this strategy made up of many recommendations, some priority recommendations, but really for us as the community to pick and choose, to prioritize ourselves, to think about orders of operation, and looking at recovery and what makes sense to go first, second, and so forth. So really, really happy to have the CPAT planning technical assistance. It is pro bono, so at no cost to the county. Thank you very much. These technical professionals were in county. So next slide, to dig a little deeper into the goals. So the goals, we did execute an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, with CPAT. And so that was in August of 23. And we had a couple overarching goals within our MOU to think about, again, how an implementation strategy may come together in recovery and rebuilding. So goal one, really looking at linking the community's desired vision, concepts, site plans. If you were engaged in the different workshops for the long-term recovery plan, we set a vision for recovery. We have the top 10 values in recovery. So looking at those things, looking at what has come before in the planning process back to phase 0 and phase 1A, if you recall, those planning processes. So looking at all of those and formulating them into a clear implementation strategy and opportunity, because we have a lot of ideas and concepts, but really when it comes down to it, rubber meets the road. How are we going to get things done? How are we going to get things built? There are orders operations, as I mentioned, in planning and building and construction and so forth. So these technical professionals do it on the daily, with clients, with, who they're working with. And so they have that expertise to really distill all of the information from the community with the vision and values and then get to what is a roadmap, a real implementation strategy for how we can do this. And goal 2, looking broadly. So goal 1, town of Greenville, right? Canyon Dam focused, and Indian Valley to as well. So really here in the 2021 Dixie Fire footprint, looking at geography in those areas of Greenville, Canyon Dam, and Indian Valley. And Indian Valley and beyond, addressing more broader planning community issues in our goal 2. So looking at economic development, looking at sustainability and capacity building and governance. And they'll talk about the guiding principles that are in this. And this is what speaks to goal 2, land use and housing and so forth. So all the things that we're looking at to address in a planning sense are in this implementation strategy. So we know that those broader concepts of economic development ripple throughout the community, housing ripples throughout the community, to understand what Greenville brought in a workforce housing capacity to other areas of the community, which then led to economic development and so forth. So getting those things back here in Greenville, Canyon Dam, and the Indian Valley area to then really make a difference throughout our county in those aspects. So I will turn it now over to Michael Smiley to continue the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Great introduction. You're good. So I thought I'd start off introducing who we are. There were 4 of us on this team, but actually we felt like Tracy was part of the team as well. She was so important to the whole process. The 4 of us, 2 of us are here today on the left, and you recognize me with a hat. Hanson is, where are you? Hanson's in the back of the room there. We're all, generally speaking, almost retired or retired, but still active in both our own communities and in certain efforts like this, where now we have a chance to give back. And we're no longer, I was a professional planning consultant and an urban designer. I tend to be interested in the physical design of places, what communities feel like, and so on. Hanson, who's with us here today, he has been a city manager, and he's been my client for different cities as a planning director in several different cities. And it's not often you become a friend with your client, but he's one that we have transcended that, and we're both friends and professional colleagues. And then the other 2 are Tom Jacobson. He's emeritus now, a professor at Sonoma State University. He's an attorney, but a professor, and he has made a specialty of wildfire planning, legal issues related to wildfire recovery, and so on. And he has a recent book out on the subject. And then Brian Mooney, like me, he's a private consultant and he's still actively working, a principal with a large engineering planning firm in San Diego. 2 of us, I being one, and Brian lost his home. My wife lost her business to wildfire. We were living in Nevada County at the time, and the Jones Fire burned down her 3-story building, home for 27 employees, and it took a while for them to get that sorted out. So that affected our home. We were evacuated in that fire, but our home wasn't lost, so that was fortunate. So 2 of us have experience. Brian lost his home down in San Diego County in the wildfire there. So we not only sort of have expertise in planning and so on, but we felt this problem. And so that's part of the reason why we were interested in getting engaged in this, really. And as Tracy said, it's a pro bono effort. And for me, I love the Sierra Nevada, so it's a chance to come up and be up here too. So it's kind of a double win. Next slide. Tracy touched on what we did. When the MOU was signed between Tracy and American Planning Association to engage us, really the first thing we did is we came up here and spent a week. And a lot during that week. Some of you may have seen us. We attended some of the meetings and so on, but probably most of you weren't even aware we were here. We did lots of site visits. We went around, we attended meetings, we interviewed, we talked with Sue many times. We had a variety of different people and places that we talked with. And we also attended a lot of the student effort, which I think if there's one great thing about that whole project that students did was their engagement with the community. I think that just struck me as being such a wonderful thing. So that seemed like a really good thing. And we were able to attend some of those meetings that were held. So that helped us learn a lot. And so as this says, we attended these site visits and interviews and so on. Then we did a lot of our own research because that's what planners do, right? And research both that's find this data at the state level, the county data, and other sources that we have just through our professional colleagues and so on. And we reviewed a lot of documents. One of them was this book here. It's titled After Great Disasters. And I'm going to mention something about this as we go forward here. Next slide, please. So we heard a lot and we learned a lot, but here's a few of the categories of things that we learned during that time. And one of the things that came out, we heard, this came from the community, some of the community meetings, it was also written in some of the documents that came out of those community meetings and so on, is the idea, a desire to refresh the government model. It was basically referring to some of the things that are going on at the national and state level about how maybe government, even down at the local level, we'd like to have ways that the community can feel more in touch. And a disaster like this brings that out even more in the needs of the community. And looking at the governance model of how everything works within how you communicate. We heard about a particular need for workforce and senior housing. And this is beyond just the need to rebuild kind of what we have here, but there's a need to make sure that we're accounting for a broad diversity of housing types because that supports jobs in a variety of different industries. So we heard many different project desires. I mean, like hundreds of different project ideas during the process of the long-term recovery plan and then what was going on when we were here. Everything from renovating the Little League fields to a whole variety of larger industries that could happen, reviving forest products industries, many, many, many projects. If you took them all and put them all together, it would represent billions of dollars of investment. So clearly it's not all possible, right? But we heard about a lot of them. And so that, of course, fits into the thing that we also learned that there's been long-term economic challenges in Indian Valley, particularly the industry of the 40s and 50s and 60s declined, the timber industry, the mining industry, and so on. And there's been challenges over time, and those challenges are even exacerbated now by the results of the wildfire. Again, a mismatch between zoning and regulations and what some of the current needs are. It relates to the first desire to refresh the government model, and also maybe a refreshing and sort of streamlining of some government policies and so on, particularly at the local level, things like zoning and so on. And I know Tracy has been working very hard at the zoning level and so on, and with the building officials to try and, streamline some of that. And then one of the things we noticed, and I particularly noticed because I'm a community designer, physical, you actually have many assets here still being made. We're in one right now. It wasn't burned. And look what we're using this for right now. And look at the opportunity to use it in so many other ways. And things like the Evergreen Market that didn't burn, an essential thing for going forward. So these are amazing assets that you still have. And then you have one other asset, and that relates to the last bullet here. We were struck by how strong the post-fire organizing effort was. And particularly, I'll speak for myself, but it's also on behalf of the team. I just have to give a big shout out to the Dixie Fire Collaborative. I think it's a national model in what we know about what goes on in other places. Very strong local organization at a very difficult time, and you got going early. And I see these slides about how many funds you're able to then channel and apply. So it's a very strong local organization. We think that, as and continue to discuss, we think it's very important that kind of local organization of some kind continue. Anyway, so let's go forward. Next slide, please. The reason I say that is because this book is this After Great Disasters. This is a survey, and this is one of the data sources that we look to as planners. And this is a survey of disasters that happen around the world by a pair of very well-known international planners. Looking at what is successful and what's not. Katrina is one example. Looking at just examples like Katrina and what worked, what didn't, can we learn from those? And one of the big concepts that the data shows, so it's not coming from our team, but the data shows this. It's this comment right here that comes out of this book. Communities with a high collective efficacy, or in other words, those who see themselves as self-organizing and not reliant on others, are most likely to recover. That's why the Dixie Fire Collaborative is so important. And a lot of what we have, this report that has been mentioned by Tracy, a lot of what we talk about here are things that can stimulate that local initiative. And so you're not dependent on, there's things you can do, both as individuals, as nonprofit organizations, private sector, and local government, working together to build on that self-organization you've already created and strengthen. And that is a very important concept. We think it's one of the most important concepts in our document. Next slide. So we established 5 guiding principles when we started this process. What are the big overarching principles that we think are so important? And here you see what they are. I don't need to read through them all, but they tend to cover 5 different categories. So one is about governance and capacity, which I was talking about. Strengthen that. Economic stability, getting the economy in a stable location. You don't have to be a big community. You don't have to continue to go. Get to a stable economy. Again, housing, forward-looking community design, that has to do with the physical place. Look to the future. Don't look to the past. About how you design and build your community. And then finally, streamlining of regulations and community planning. So these became 5, if you like, topic areas. And there are principles that we defined based on what we heard. And from that, next slide, please. In our report, you will find that in those 5 topic areas, and so that roughly divides out, if you see there's 43 general recommendations. And you'll see those, some of you have a copy of the report now already. And as you read through it, you'll see there's 43 general recommendations. So if you just divide that in these 5 overarching categories, that roughly ends up being about 9 recommendations. In some very big categories that are very important. But we took one further step and we said it would probably be helpful if we took those 43 and identified from our point of view, which ones are kind of priority, ones you might think about getting going on the highest priorities. And so there's 18 of those. And as I mentioned before, all of the 5 categories, all of the recommendations are organized according to the 5 general principles. So they reference that in the report. The focus is on Indian Valley, Greenville, and Canyon Dam. So we don't focus up to Lake Alban or any other areas. It's focused on Indian Valley itself. And so the recommendation is very important that we think that when we talk about governance, we think about this place, not a governance structure that is beyond the capabilities of this community. There are general and specific recommendations. When I say specific, there's some general governance recommendations and so on, or economic considerations. But there's a very specific things. So it's like just to show progress and to get individuals involved. Maybe you want to create a community garden on some of the land that's now vacant and get started on that. The community can get engaged. It's a way to build community. So there's some very specific things in here too. And so look through and see the things that individuals and the small organizations can get going on right now. You don't need to wait on governments to do this, or you don't need to wait on that grant that's going to come down 2 years from now. And then finally, we see this as really a grand partnership, and it relates to what I just said, is that these recommendations, because some are general, some are long-term, and others are very specific, it's what we call a grand partnership. I refer to it that way. There's a role for the public sector. You take 43 recommendations, and one of these is broken down. Not all those recommendations are, some is for the county to do. Some of it, though, is the things individuals can do, as I just mentioned. And so one of my favorite things that you've already done or that happened is that sign that was done by the children at that school, I guess over in Chester. And there's a sign over there by Main Street that, what a wonderful thing. And it shows both to visitors like me, but it also creates a kind of spirit and it shows, wow, there's people actually live here, there's a community here. Little things like that, small things. So it's a partnership between public sector, private, nonprofit organizations like the DFC or whatever the continuing of that is, and even individuals. Next slide, please. The sort of the highlights that's in here, talking about some of those things that we think are the most important of all of this, are capitalizing on these existing assets that you've got, particularly, and that's twofold. One is the existing assets of the physical facilities, and make sure you're using these well before you go build new ones, because that's expensive, takes new maintenance, and you've got this today. And so if you've got underutilized parts of the school, which I was happy to see, Sue, you're mentioning that parts of the school are going to go to community functions. Great. Now there's jurisdictional issues between the school district, and this exists everywhere, but to start to try, maybe we can soften those jurisdictional boundaries and so on, and start to use this particular asset for something that has both community-wide and school purposes. There's many other things out there. You've got tremendous built physical assets that are out along the Route 89 corridor. To start, there's an opportunity to infill some of those things, perhaps as a starting point. I've already said it, promote the individual and community initiatives. We think one of the most important things to get started on right now, and I believe Tracy is beginning to work on this now at the county level, is there needs to be a market study based on population. Like right now, we know that the community before was built at a time when the population was 3,000 people or so. It had physical infrastructure, and we lost a lot of it. A lot of it was not well utilized in the historic part. It was either empty or underutilized space. A market study will help you understand, first of all, based on the population today, and what do we think the population is going to be in 15 or 20 years? What facilities do we need? And how much? How many square feet? So what we're building, and we get at similar things like the housing needs assessment, and both the market analysis and the housing needs assessment. These would start to get at things like, well, okay, we know we need some parks, and you're working on that, but how much parks? How many parks? How many acres of parks? If you don't want to build too many, and then you've got a maintenance for a community that actually is going to be small. So the market analysis is a very important thing to look at that. There's people that know how to do that and do it very well. And then we think it's important to start looking at the zoning and building regulations. You've already started on that. Tracy's been very active in that. Continue that. This point about continuing to strengthen the local governance structure, I've also already mentioned that. We think that's a very important thing. And if the Dixie Fire Collaborative is going to change into something else, or it's going to be done a different way, what this collaborative has done is almost like a long-term community voice, community planning agency that you would see in other places. And so we believe that local governance structure is really, really important. And it helps the county do their work better. And then finally, of course, that all facilitates and assists in building. So these are some of the priorities. Next slide. So now I'm going to turn it over to my compadre, Hanson, and he'll talk a little bit about where we go. Thank you.
Oh, okay, all right. That's just like, it's like a talk show or something. Thank you, Michael. What I'm gonna do is talk a little bit about kind of next steps. How we envision or suggest that you might use the implementation strategy we prepared moving forward. First of all, Tracy covered really well why we were brought in and what our purpose was. And Michael's really covered kind of the highlights of what the report recommends. So I'm not going to cover that. So it's really going to be talking about, okay, how might you want to use something for the future? One thing that I wanted to reflect when Tracy asked us to provide our services. First of all, versus Michael and the rest of the team, I haven't experienced wildfire, so part of it is like, how can I provide an expertise? Because I really see this community as the experts, even though I have planning expertise, I haven't experienced wildfire. So coming into this project, as we reiterated, it was so important for us to really listen to what you have to say, hear your experiences, hear what your major concerns, take all that in. And I can tell you, as Michael mentioned, I was so impressed with how much work has already been done by the time we came in, the background reports, the looking at the minutes of the DFC meetings. Incredible rich discussion has already occurred. I think what you've done is really a model, not only as an organization, DFC, but just the things you have learned through this wildfire is really valuable for the rest of California. And one of the things that Tracy will be involved in next week, we're actually making a presentation as part of a webinar series of another group I'm involved in to help provide insights on issues and perhaps lessons learned to assist with the LA wildfires. And even though a lot of folks say, how can Plymouth County, that's not even, totally, I really think that what you've done is really a model, and people, whether in LA, anywhere in California, United States, can learn from what you've done. My exposure to wildfires dates back to many years ago. I lived in the Bay Area, and the Oakland firestorm that happened in 1989. You might remember that. That was really the first, like, wow, whole community can burn, And I was involved in a specific plan in the Hayward Hills, and we decided to really incorporate fire safe standards, now fire-wise standards, into the specific plan. When I look back at it, quite honestly, it was very, it's very inadequate, knowing what we know about wildfires. It's an example in this community, unfortunately, as we have learned a lot. And when I probably look back at that specific plan, I probably will cringe, about, some pretty innocent standards. So, clear, 30-foot parameter, that's not going to do it these days. So this has been a learning experience for me, so I really thank the community for allowing us to come into your community and learn from you and hopefully provide some, or planner perspective on moving forward. So what we see as the next step is preparing a preparatory action plan. And one thing I want to really distinguish is this implementation strategy is not meant to be a plan. We're not coming forward and saying, this is what you need to do. I mean, from an idealistic standpoint, it'd be wonderful if you could do it all. But we know that's not practical or realistic. You have limited staffing, resources, limited funds. So what we're seeing is, even though we've identified some priorities, in some cases we think certain things are really important, or from a sequence standpoint, you need to do this before you move on to the next. For instance, the market study that Michael mentioned, that kind of sets the stage for making decisions further on. It can also assist you in applying for grants down the road for your future projects. So that's really critical. So there's a certain sequencing that's important, but really, it's really the community will need to decide what is most important for you. It's meant to be, I would say, it's like a menu of different options, but the community really decides what is most important and what is most practical to do. So please keep it that standpoint. I know some of the reaction we've got was like, wow, this is a lot of stuff. And we know it is. We're kind of like, we threw everything in the kitchen sink perhaps into it, but we realize from a practical, realistic standpoint, the community, you're the experts to really decide what is most important to you. So hopefully you use it as a resource in that area. One of the things that Michael mentioned is there's short-term and long-term priorities. And looking at what you've done since we came here 18 months ago, you've done a lot already. I mean, you've done a lot before we came, and you've done a lot now. You're moving forward with doing an economic analysis. You're doing a housing assessment, so you've recognized the need for for housing is a critical issue, so you're moving forward on that front. We've done some infrastructure studies. All those things are so important. And then here now you're moving forward with the park, park sides. I know the school got reestablished. There's a lot of things you've already done that is reflected in the plan. So part of me says, well, you don't really need the strategy, you're already doing a lot of this stuff. But hopefully this will, to me, it kind of reinforces that you guys are really doing the right thing, So I just want to commend you for what you've done already. So when you look at the plan, I know there's going to be much more discussion in the community on what is the priorities, what are the desires for your community, and what is the capacity that you have to do these things. Funding is a critical item and is, shifting quite a bit, especially at the federal level, a lot of uncertainty. So, but there's a lot of, other sources of funding through foundations and state funding that may be available. But so kind of matching what is the capacity, both from a staff standpoint, also from a financial resource standpoint, that kind of meets your desire. And that's that puzzle that the community will figure out and debate. As Michael mentioned, it requires a strong partnership, and you're already doing that. You're just the funding that you've gotten from all the different nonprofits and from FEMA, all the different agencies. That partnership is important, and we would say that you should continue. I think DFC, this group, or some hybrid of this group is important to continue to promote that partnership because, everybody, it's a big job, but getting everybody together helps break it up into little pieces. And then the last piece I wanted to mention, which you're already pursuing. I'm looking through your materials and just hearing what Sue was mentioning about grant funding, all of that. The funding piece to me, you can have a wish list of everything you want to get done, but the bottom line is many of these items, not all of them, require funding. So once you decide, the ideal path is you decide what you want to do and you seek funding for it. But it's not a perfect world, and sometimes the funding opportunities are there and sometimes they're not. So you look for, okay, there's funding available here. That funding could, maybe achieve some more priorities. So priority setting is very much, driven by what's the funding that's out there also, So it's kind of a match, it's like a chicken and egg kind of situation, you know what I mean? So you have an exciting, you guys are doing such wonderful work, and we really think that this is a model that should be publicized to others on how, it's a struggle. We're not saying, it's not easy. There's a lot of pain, a lot of emotion, but you're such a wonderful example for other communities to follow. So I really commend you for that. So with that, I want to conclude, and what we really wanted to hear is feedback on what you've heard, and if you had a chance to look at the report, give us some initial reaction on what you think, or even talk among yourselves, what you see stands out or most important in your mind in this report, because I know it's a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, so as Hanson just mentioned, the APA California chapter is doing a wildfire webinar series for LA County recovery. And so I don't know if we're the 5th in the series. It seems like there's several. I think we're number 5. Yeah. So it's gonna be Friday this coming Friday. So April 18th, 1 p.m. I will send 1 p.m. Yeah, April 18th, 1 p.m. I'll send an email to Patrick. And you could get it out to the DFC email listserv. And if people, it's a free webinar through, again, APA California chapter. And so you can join in and listen to the discussion. So I will be one of the presenters. And then as well, it's exactly about the CPAP report and the implementation strategy. So is it Hanson and Michael and the whole team? Okay, yeah, so the whole team is next Friday, or this coming Friday, April 18th at 1 p.m. So we'll get you the information, and maybe even the Plymouth Sun. I see Jane in the audience. If the Plymouth Sun could also maybe get that information out in a quick article, that would be terrific. Okay.
Great, and just a couple, just like a small sort of addendum to what you just heard and just how this information can be used. So still a lot to go through and digest, but in short order, so on page 19 of this document, there's recommendations A through F, right, that specifically talk to the DFC. I use the DFCs here's as an example, since we've just been talking about it, but when we talk about local governance and we talk about how to work things by, with, and through our community, the CPAT has provided some recommendations. And remember, those are recommendations like that. That's not like, yeah, you can only do B, and you can only do E, you can only do F. There's an opportunity here for hybrid and different approaches. And I think the context to think of this, and this is just my personal opinion, this is the way that I've been viewing it, or what are the results? What are the outcomes that we desire as a community? And I think far too often, it's very easy, and I fall victim to this all the time, is, well, what do we have right now, right? And there is that balance of, well, what can we do with what we have? And that's important to acknowledge where you are, because you can only employ the pieces that you have, right? Not what you wish or hope for. But sometimes there is a valued practice to sort of reflect and say, like, let's just kind of put what we have right now to the side a little bit and think about what are the outcomes moving forward that we want? How do we want to connect with our county government? How do we want to coordinate amongst the community? I hear, sometimes that people are saying, well, I don't know this, and how can I be involved with that? We have structures right now. And, sometimes people say that, there are advantages and disadvantages to how they're working, whether it be a five-person board with the Union Valley Community Services District or the IVRPD, of which you just saw the contact information. And sometimes, the counter to that is like, well, we already have these entities. How do we use those more effectively, right? Do we need another layer, a community action committee? Do we need to call, instead of that being the DFC, because, an argument there is that the DFC was special purpose for the Dixie fire. But as we sort of transition from things that are less fire recovery related and really more community development related, is there an opportunity to change that DF and put an IV in front of it? I don't know, like an Indian Valley collaborative. But once again, a collaborative is only as effective or valuable as it's the sum of its parts, right? And so as the collaborative waxes and wanes with those that want to collaborate, then it's kind of like, where are you looking to your pack for that strength, right? And these are just these things to keep in mind as we think about what are the outcomes that everybody wants. And there's value in public discussion, and we need to have that. And then there's also value in how do we act on it. So I am requesting, as you look at page 19, and you think about this and reflect with your own groups and organizations and the people that you talk to, really, what do you think we can pull off here? And how can we use, much like we're using this existing building, right, in a creative way, are there ways to use existing structures, governmental structures, sub-governmental structures, like our special districts, in that same capacity or a similar capacity, rather? Is there a better way to provide information to our boards that we already have? And, I think we talked a little bit about this 2 months ago, is that, the same people that were here 2 months ago saying, like, not only am I preaching to the choir, I'm preaching to the choir director, right? You all lead these things, right? And the bandwidth and how, the burnout that exists, not just with our special districts and our sub-governmental organizations, but we have, civic organizations, Rotary, we have the Chamber of Commerce, and then there's youth organization. And all that takes people to run them. And so, is there an opportunity to go with what we have existing and come up with a quarterly meeting schedule where everybody kind of comes here and you send a rep and we start slow, and it's like, what do you want? What do we want? Let's talk about what people want, what the outcomes are. And then that big funnel can get a little bit smaller. So those are just some ideas that no, this is all pre-decisional. No, I mean, and it's not a unilateral decision, right? These are all multilateral. Everybody's got to kind of be involved in this. And it's messy, and it's not always agreement. That's okay, right? But I think there's an opportunity to get there, with some of the things that we have. And what I also want to touch on is like some of the things in that report. So I'm gonna actually, well, yeah, let's just get into this and I'll circle back. All right. So a couple of things that I just wanted to make sure we're still aware. I did touch on this a little bit a couple months ago, but both Assemblywoman Hadwick, Heather Hadwick, our California 1 state assemblywoman, and then also Senator Megan Dolly, so our state senator, both are working on, well, Assemblywoman Hadwick, specifically AB 429. That's the legislation that would provide the tax exemption for not only the Dixie Fire on fire settlements, on the Dixie Fire settlement, but also Mill Fire, and I think there was another fire included in there. On this is a link to a ABC news station that had a March 18th, I think, news story, just that the process is moving, and both governmental reps have been working on this extensively with numerous other both assembly representatives and then also state senators to get this legislation moved through. You'll more than likely see things start to happen on this as the state does their mid-budget or mid-year budget review in June. So no promises, but that's probably when those things will come up. A gentleman by the name of Bruce Ross, he's the public relations representative for Senator Dolly. He had recommended that, he said petitions are fine, but really letters of support from organization and groups advocating for the passage of associated legislation as it gets to Governor Newsom's desk. Those are a little bit more effective when an organization or representative. Yes.
Dolly or Hadwick?
Dolly, we're both really. Like, yeah, I'd recommend change the 2 line and send the letter to both. But Nan, I will find out. I'll get more specifics on that. I'll contact Mr. Ross and just maybe get an actual. Yeah, that's exactly what I'll do. And I'll send it out in an email blast. Recover California. So this is the grant that we've been talking about extensively for the last year. It's the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery. This was money that was provided for both single family reconstruction and then the single family mitigation. So defensible space and things like that. Defensible space retrofits. This grant is gonna sunset on this week, actually, on April 15th. So this has been a tough one, to be perfectly honest, with regard to the single family mitigation or single family reconstruction, rather, of getting folks not only enrolled, but then getting through the process. And to be perfectly honest, it is not easy. And I think some folks can attest to the other component of it. It's been very challenging. So there is an opportunity that the money left over to that grant could be reallocated and repurposed to other programs, housing programs in the county. And Tracy Ferguson and a few others met with the Housing Community Development Department of the state a week ago Friday to discuss how roughly $9 million could be reallocated in a way to help support low-income housing in the county, but it still remains to be seen what that's gonna be. Yeah.
Money, we gotta keep it.
It's a lot of money, gotta keep it. Good point. Just keep it in the county. County long-term recovery coordinator position. So the Board of Supervisors did approve a position. They've been talking about this for quite a bit, but this position would be a long-term recovery coordinator. So back to page 19, right? So how can the things that exist within the DFC be transitioned to other entities? So the county will have a full-time position paid for 3 years to support long-term recovery, looking both, retroactively, like looking in the rearview mirror to the Dixie Fire, and to work with Tracy and then other department heads across the county on the recovery projects and the forthcoming long-term recovery plan that will be out later on this summer-ish. So that's one piece of being able to kind of pass the baton in this relay race to another entity. But with that, that's something to consider as well. And also, if you know somebody that's interested in that position, by all means, I think the job is on the county HR website.
April 30th, we're kind of having an interim, all applications by April 30th, we're gonna interview.
Okay.
And then see where it goes.
So the month of April, and then it'll probably start interview process in May, June. Yeah, May. Okay. No, I'm still, I got a job. All right, so grants, you've heard a little bit, you know, you gotta hear things 7 times, right, before you remember it, something like that. But we'll just go over these because it's important with how this kind of works with the dollar amount, the roughly $500,000 that Danny showed earlier, kind of where we are, and then what we see forthcoming. So just this past week, $99,000 to the Dawn Institute. The Dawn Institute, for many of you, you know that they've sort of been the crown jewel of Indian Falls for about 80 years. They've had something. Yeah, the Dawn has been in existence in Indian Falls for what they're claiming 80 years. So I'm going to their website, but fair enough. But they have 2 different components that they're going to use this grant for, or 2 orchards and then a garden. And then one of the components is also to, at one time they did host field trips for primary school age children, but they also have an internship program for those in, I think, high school, but definitely in the college years to work on ag and garden related positions, fields that they can endeavor in. In fact, there's a number of folks down at the La Sierra Food Project, Rugged Roots Farm, that started at the Dawn Institute, and they kind of took their knowledge down to Quincy. So it's something that they're trying to kickstart again, and that's what that $99,000 in part will contribute to. The Dixie Fire Canopy Project, many of you remember that they supported 2 trees, 4 shrubs across a variety of different residential and commercial properties last summer. They're going to do the same thing. The Dixie Fire Collaborative, the steering committee approved $50,000 to support that grant. And then North Valley Community Foundation is matching with an additional 50% for another $50,000. That's $100,000 that Dixie Fire Canopy Project has for this season to continue their work. Indian Valley Chamber of Commerce, I'm gonna skip over them because I've got a little bit more information on the next slide for them. Indian Valley Recreation Parks District, I think Sue covered that one. But Dixie Fire Collaborative, roughly $72,000. North Valley Community Foundation, roughly $72,000 for a total of $144 for the fitness center, the makerspace, et cetera, located here. We have 2 grants that are coming our way. One has been received, and it's kind of the fine print there. Plymouth County Community Development Commission. This is our housing authority located down in Quincy on Main Street, run by the executive director, Roger Diefendorf. He's applied for a $25,000 grant. That money will be used to work with the Rural Community Assistance Corporation, RCAC, and they will use that $25,000 to pay RCAC to help with the development of a down payment assistance program. So the Community Development Commission would be the holders of a down payment assistance program of a fund to be determined later. There's been talk about maybe up to $50,000 for down payment assistance, maybe $100,000. I think they're still fleshing that out. But first is to actually have a coordinator contracted through RCAC who has experience establishing these programs in other communities to really articulate what the parameters of that program would be. So what it would look like is that usually first time home buyers, that's the way it's been couched up to this point, is that a first time home buyer could receive tens of thousands of dollars to be determined to help with down payment assistance for a new home. And that's an opportunity to stoke that housing in our communities. And then super beginning stages, but the Indian Valley Food Pantry will more than likely apply for a grant to help supplement some of the food costs that they see having over the next 6 to 7 months or so, to be able to supplement some of the donations that they receive from various food banks in the area and Nevada, but then also to be able to purchase some of those items just to make sure that they have enough. I mean, just as I don't have a spreadsheet or anything like that to support this, but just talking to the food pantry, they've seen a significant uptick in their volume and clientele. So there's an opportunity here to support that. Next slide, please. Okay, so with regard to the Indian Valley Chamber of Commerce, the steering committee provided a grant to the Indian Valley Chamber of Commerce for $36,000 to provide roughly $3,000 per business, so 12 businesses for upgraded signage. Just physical signage, whether it be a banner or a aluminum sign or a PVC sign to hang to adorn a brick and mortar business or a trailer, a food truck, that type of thing. And then also the other component of that was working with a digital marketing specialist on their digital footprint. So do they have a social media presence? Do they have, if I searched for, pizza in Taylorsville, would Grizzly Bite pop up on Google Maps? Those types of things. So so Kata Marketing in Quincy, Josie Litchfield, she's doing that review on the behalf of this grant for those businesses. And then basically providing the training wheels to get them up and going if they don't have those things. And if they do have some of those things, just refining it, making it more effective so that their digital presence is where it should be. So that grant actually been alive for a couple of weeks now, and we've got a full 12 businesses, plus we have a waiting list. So steering committee members, at some point, once we kind of get through and we've got a good proof of concept with how this worked, maybe coming back to the steering committee with the Chamber of Commerce, if it's effective, to see if there's the potential for a phase 2. So more to follow on that. Actually, I got one more business grant. This has been out on the street for a number of months since last year, but this is the Dixie Fire Recovery For-Profit Business Economic Development Grant Program. So this is offered to businesses in a census tract. Let's see, census tract in 2 block groups. Yeah, so there's a map that depicts it, plus a QR code that you can put in an address of where that business is located to see if they would initially qualify based off of location. So numero uno is, are you in the geographic area? And most of the geographic area incorporates Greenville, Crescent Mills, Taylorsville, and then moving down past Indian Falls, take a right at the Y and go all the way down towards Tobin. So businesses that are incorporated in that area. There is, some, are we, 4th and inches at, are we at the goal line where we kind of have to measure and see if a business actually makes it? And then unfortunately, there have been a couple of businesses that are literally, from here to there, outside of the boundary. And that's, with this particular grant, that's where the grant has crumbled. But there will be other opportunities, right? But this grant is still available. Tracy Ferguson is administrating this grant. And is the point of contact if businesses have questions about it. But it's a pretty good deal. It's up to $20,000 for equipment and other capital expenses for that business. And then there's an additional $22,700 as sort of an additional kicker, if you will, if those expenses are spent here in county, right? So up to $20,000, and then if you're using a local business to source those capital expenses, then you get a little extra bump. So thank you. Okay, once again, for applying for the Dixie Fire Fund, which is the fund that the DFC operates. It's at North Valley. You can access it from our website, but then also the North Valley Community Foundation.org. Under the Dixie Fire Fund is a great place to get started. And I'm always available to help anybody that is curious about how to apply for a grant. And then just go through the steps so that it's well understood, and that hopefully we can support your organization with a grant funding if it meets the criteria of the grant guidelines. Here's just a quick rundown of some updates and events of things that are occurring. So this coming a week from today at the Taylorsville campground at 9 a.m., the 4-H are having an Easter egg hunt. We've also got the Greenville Little League opening day, which may be out here where it typically is across the street from Marcia's house on May 3rd. It's always a good time, even if you don't have a little leaguer playing, it's a good time to come on out and just see the festivities. We also have Lisa Forcino over in Crescent Mills. She has her first Saturday market that will also be on May the 3rd. There's usually a couple of classic cars that show up there. The Indian Valley Chamber of Commerce is hosting its valley-wide yard sale, so don't miss that one on Saturday, the 17th and Sunday, the 18th, I believe. 2 days, price to move, ready to go. The Greenville Rotary Century Ride on Memorial Day weekend, Saturday, the 24th. That should be a good event, an inaugural event underneath the Rotary Club, I think. Is that correct? So you might be able to get some more information on the share outs from that. And then, of course, 4th of July Parade and Silver Buckle Rodeo in Taylorsville on July 4th. And then on July 19th, busy day in the Valley. We have the Junior Rodeo over in Taylorsville, but then also it's Gold Diggers Day. So if you're interested in, if your group or organization, or you just want to volunteer for Gold Diggers, there will be another meeting on April the 24th at 6 p.m. at the DFC office. Christy Hazelton from Region Burger, she's the chairwoman, she's the lead planner, but lots of people are contributing their ideas and volunteering for different activities and events. Greg is he's the coordinator for the parade. So if you have parade ideas or
That'd be great.
you can see Greg Walsh, who's heading that up. Actually, what came about the other day was antique tractors, right?
Yeah, that was Debbie Allen's ideas to bring in antique tractors.
Yeah.
I thought that was really a good idea.
So in addition to some classic cars and fire trucks and things of that nature, if you know anybody that has probably operating antique tractors, not just lawn decoration, but antique tractors, by all means, direct them to Greg, and that might be a pretty cool thing. Oh. Which, oh yeah, that's right. Debbie is the one that brought that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, get the little dozer.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea, yeah.
We were all talking about that actually. With Debbie, and it's her dozer.
Yeah, I mean, I wanna get the stagecoach from the museum from the in Taylorsville.
Yes,
It'd be great.
outstanding.
Yeah, and I wanna coordinate as much as I can with the Taylorsville 4th of July parade as well. So.
Yeah, and we are still, the Grand Marshal has yet to be determined, but there is, this year's theme is honoring contractors, builders, people in the trades, engineers, architects, everybody that has thus far contributed to our rebuild. So we're trying to figure out a clever way to be able to host, maybe have grand marshals.
Yeah.
Right, and maybe just have their trucks and equipment maybe lead the way, something of that nature. Okay. And this was this morning. So I was out stretching my legs, taking a little walk, and there is a good picture from that's Old Dump Road, about 5 miles up of our valley. Not like Taylor's photos, sorry, not as professional done. But anyway, all right, next slide, please. All right, share outs. Do we have a share out? Does anybody have any information, news, updates? Yes, sir.
They mentioned the Indian Valley Century Ride. If, Indian Valley Century Ride that's sponsored by Rotary, used to be the Chamber of Commerce, and they've allowed us to take it over. Hasn't happened for several years, but May 24th, that is happening. So we have rides, we have 3 options. So there's a quarter century, a metric century, and a full century. So you could do 25 miles going to Taylorsville and back. You can do the 64 miles going to the Genesee store and back, or you can do the full 100 miles going up around Antelope Lake. Should be a great event. There have been a lot of people helping, and we have some great meals, a rest stop. We have 5 rest stops, but one of those being at the Grizzly Bite in Taylorsville. We have the Genesee store doing I think a fabulous lunch. They're well known for what they do, and so that's an exciting part for us. And there's a post-ride meal at the school. The Indian Valley Academy is putting that on for us. So if you're interested or you have friends that are interested, please let them know. It's an expensive ride to put on, but it's also an opportunity for us to hopefully make a little money, but also bring people in to see that Indian Valley really isn't just burned out. There's a lot of beauty still here. So if you let them know, they can register at ivcenturyride.org. And that gives them all kinds of information and the opportunity to register. Oh, look at that. I believe I said Taylor. All right.
Need volunteers? Yes.
We actually have one rest stop we'd like more volunteers for, so anybody that's willing to help us, we'd love to see those volunteers come out and help us out. Great. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
So we've been working on Firewise communities and, we started with Greenville and then we had the fire. So we kind of left that for a while. We'll come back to it, but we've been working on Williams and Peck's Valley roads and the areas around there. And we've done a lot of analysis of the homes that are still left in the properties and how they're hardening their properties and their homes. And we had a collaboration last week, which some of you were at, thank you, with members of the fire community talking to us about different things. And now we're actually on the website. So it's taken us about 2 years to do that. So I'm going to be contacting all the people that live in that area, telling them how to get on the website so that if you do any property or home hardening, you can put your hours spent, like my husband was out doing burn piles on our property in Greenville, and Greenville is on the website, so I'm still putting our hours on there. Or how much money you have spent for a new weed whacker, new shovels, rakes, that kind of thing. And then every year they look at that, and as we get more and more hours, money spent, then we could be a Firewise community like Taylorsville, like Genesee Woods, like Greenhaven over here at the end of Wolf Creek Road. They're Firewise communities, and there are some homes that have told their insurance companies that they're Firewise communities, and they've gotten better rates on their insurance. So I think it's worthwhile to do. So anyway, I'll give you more information on that probably in a week or so.
Thank you, Mike. What was the question?
How retroactive are the activities?
How far back? How retroactive are they?
Volunteer work hours.
Last year I contacted everybody and asked how many cubic yards of yard waste you had gotten rid of. Because Fire Safe had asked me for that information. And then I would budget a little bit, because you did all that work, right? And so if you, during the year, can kind of put in some of those hours worked, because you did them and we didn't get to put it on the website. So I won't tell if you won't tell. Yeah, Michael.
I'd just like to support the comment you made that it's worthwhile. I founded a Firewise community in Nevada City. It was the biggest one in Nevada City, big neighborhood. And like I say, we never burned, but we founded it right before, after the Paradise Fire happened. And some people, as you say, were able to get benefits on their insurance as a result of being in a Firewise community. But the other thing that happened is that we got organized and we worked with the county and the city and to get some grants. And with that support, we kind of initiated it. And with that support, just recently, county got this huge grant to go out and do a shaded fuel bar break on the edge of town where our neighborhood happened to be in it, but others as well. So it also gives you a stronger voice, just like the DFC has been, like gives you a stronger voice in lobbying to CAL FIRE and others where the funding is minimal. And we all know there's a lot of money out there right now for both at all levels of government, for fire fire improvement and fire safety and so on. So it can really help with that effort. So I think I recommend it's very, I can support that idea. It's a wonderful thing for you to do.
Any additional share outs today? Anyone? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a couple. So if you haven't heard, the county, the zoning administrator did approve the Indian Valley Public Safety Center project. So that is moving forward with the amended special use permit. And more information from Adam Cox and, IBCSD, but it's the parcel where the temporary, fire station has been. Also, there was the temporary, sheriff substation there. So the big picture project is bringing back the firehouse station, having the substation for the sheriff, and then as well Plymouth District Hospital ambulance. So the ambulance will be there. There's actually beds for overnight stays for the ambulance employees and whatnot. So it sounds like that, getting to the earthwork and the infrastructure and all that's needed to set it up to go vertical will be happening this year. But getting those building plans into the county now can happen. We can plan check them. We can have them ready to issue when they're ready to pull the permit and so forth. But I think they may be moving forward with first a foundation only design and plan and the grading and the drainage and all of that sort of thing. So yeah, so really exciting. And as you may know, the county is in a funding agreement with IVCSD. The county through our PG&E settlement funds has allocated $1.5 million to the project. And so in that MOU, there are county responsibilities, IVCSD responsibilities and so forth, and there's milestones to hit. And so know that Adam Cox will be before the Board of Supervisors on a quarterly basis, or as we work through those milestones for more updates and information. So keeping you all, in the loop on that and so forth. So if you see some things, mobilizing or some of that stuff coming off, to be able to get ready for the groundwork that may be happening here come summer. Okay, yeah. So permanent fire station, permanent substation for the sheriff and PDH ambulance. And then as well, I'll be back in Greenville on Monday or tomorrow, or Monday, 9:30. So underground construction is a contractor for PG&E, and they have approached the county under what is the emergency urgency ordinance for a temporary laydown yard located north of the highway, just as you're coming into town before you get to the bridge. So there's an industrial parcel there that's zoned. It's kind of a little more of a sliver parcel. And so if you see that something's going on in that parcel, what's happening is, some mobilization next week. It's a little rough, right? The surface of that parcel, if you can kind of imagine it. And so but yes, there'll be, it's a temporary laydown yard. So pipes and, material storage and equipment storage. There'll be an office trailer there, and so forth. So just wanted to let the public, you all know that is going to be likely through the end of August. So this spring, summer as a laydown yard. Okay. And it will have a fence, some security cameras and whatnot. But yeah, through the ordinance, I am working with them to make sure that they are adherent to, all the conditions that they need to, be required. Yeah. Oh, as well. Yes. So, the medical and dental and pharmacy with Greenville Rancheria was also approved by, the county zoning administrator. That was back in December. And so those plans are in plan check, even, I don't know if they're through plan check. We did have to go to an outside, the building department did ask for an outside plan checker on that one because it's, a bit of medical service, a little more sophisticated than some of the plan checkers had experience plan checking. So I know it's out of planning for sure, and it's in the building department to be plan checked. Do you have
A representative from the Greenville Rancheria was at our steering committee meeting on Monday and said that exact thing, that their plans had been outsourced because of the technical aspects of it being a medical facility, an Oshkosh-free facility. And then when they get those back, if there's any corrections that need to be made with the architect, so on and so forth, that'll happen. And then they're looking at May to put it out for bid.
Great. Did you also have a question?
I just had a question on the laydown yard, stuff that there is bashing there, what is the work?
Yeah, so it continues to be the PG&E work for undergrounding. Yeah, so it's a PG&E contractor for undergrounding. I don't know the specific project. I am in contact with the PG&E Public Information Officer, and she is interested in coming back to the Board of Supervisors. And if you all want to hear from her too, at a DFC Saturday meeting, but there's more work to be done, if they're in the canyon or in town or, wherever in the county. But yeah, in 2025 and potentially through 2026. So for her to give us more information on maps and where and when and so forth with, yeah.
We'll contact Casey on.
Oh, is that, yeah, that's your local support with PG.
Quickly follow up on this, because I noticed some markings up on Main Street around our house that says there. Looks like PG marking there. We're getting ready just to put in a driveway and I'm thinking like, have it, not put in, rip it up like. So we can find out.
Also-
They've already underground there, so I don't know what.
What's their, yeah, and also, Rob Thorman, the Public Works Director, being a county roadway, that an encroachment permit with PG&E, so likely County Public Works knows about that project, so if you want to give them a call, yeah, Rob would be back in the office on Monday. Anything else for the county? Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other share outs? All right, next slide. Questions? Were there any questions? Yes, sir.
Like everything that went quicker, that's frustrating to see how long it's take. I feel like as a community, we're making good progress in a lot of different areas, but the one really tough nut to crack, I don't see happening, that's the economic sustainability.
Yeah.
We were struggling before the fire, and I thought 3.5 years ago that we helped people to bring businesses back, they'd be thrilled to come do that, and it hasn't been. So what recommendations can you give us as a community to try to attract businesses and create economic sustainability?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Is this on? Yeah, I'll take a shot at it, and maybe Hanson's got something to say as well. We addressed that in the document, in the strategy report, and so if you get a chance to read through it, I know there's a lot there, but that really is a lot of why one of our priority recommendations is that a market analysis needs to be done, and then the follow-on to that would be the preparing an economic development strategy. And those two things go hand in hand. And I think that perhaps some of your frustration, because there's been a lot to do, of course, and a lot has been done. But it was our sense that one of the things that was really needed, and maybe it wasn't done early because you're still in recovery mode, is a real solid economic analysis. And that's really important. In any development effort or any town building effort or anything, we need to do some fundamental economics. And that gets at looking at, as I was mentioning slightly before, it looks at, first of all, what's your baseline population today? And then, and economists have ways they can get this information. Nobody knows, we don't have a magic wand or some way of looking in the future and knowing exactly what's going to happen, but we can project out 10 years, 15 years, or 25 years. And it gets some sense on where the population might go if given current trends. Now, it's likely right now, the baseline population isn't very big. Obviously, it's nowhere near even what it was. And even before the fire, it wasn't what it was in 1960. And so the problem with businesses is you can try to give them incentives and so on, but if there isn't enough population to support that business, no business is going to come. And at least in the long term, they might open and close. And this is true everywhere. And so you really do need to understand your fundamental demographics how many square feet of grocery store can we support? And this would be for the whole Inland Valley area. And once you know that, based on today or what we think the population is today, or maybe it's going to be in 2 years. And I'll use just some number that says, okay, let's say you're going to have 500 people now in the valley. How much business activity can 500 people support? And it's not going to be as big as it was when it was 1,200 people. And so then the next thing you go beyond that, you say, okay, what might we grow to, and how much more business activity would that support? And so this is the problem, is that unless you totally subsidize business, it may come, but a year later, it can't survive because it doesn't have the population support it. That's why we think right now, one of the most important things that needs to be done is to look at the fundamental economics, which is based on demographics. And then from that, identify how much you need. And it may be that some of those businesses that you really want, you can't sustain them. So you have to look at the things that are sustainable today. And then define your community that way and build a great smaller community. It's sustainable. I'm going on here, but then the economic development strategy then looks at, well, what are the types of businesses that we probably can get here? And I mentioned that there's hundreds of projects that people came up with through the process of wanting this and wanting that, wanting different things. Some of those projects required huge investments, big resources. Some of the, particularly for regeneration of forest, surplus forest products and so on. Those take big outside investment and lots of money. But one thing you can do that even small entrepreneurs can do, and that's tourism related things. And there was perhaps I'll say, undeveloped tourism industry here before, because even the passenger industry, that's something you could probably grow larger. Right? And there are some opportunities there, it appears to us. But again, this is where economists can look at what the opportunities are. But opportunities like what's going on with the trail system, the regional trail systems. And just anecdotally, I can say that if those of you are familiar with Etna, up in the Shasta Valley, on the edge of the Shasta Valley, that small community, if you go there today, it feels like it's full of PCT backpackers. And it's amazing because the PCT contributes a significant amount to the economy of that little town. So it's looking at the mountain bike community is growing like crazy up here. I'm a bicyclist myself. In fact, I wanted to talk to you further about them. But there's these opportunities that they aren't history. They're talking about looking to the forward. Where are we today? And build on those. Small entrepreneurs can build businesses around those kinds of things. You don't need giant outside investment to build big cogen plants and all that. And you start to develop a sustainable, smaller community. So you're not looking to the past, you're looking to where you're going forward. But that economic study is key. I know Tracy has something to say about that, actually, right?
And it's about the money, right? So yeah, I submitted a grant on behalf of the county, on behalf of Greenville, Indian Valley, and Sue Weber and Paul, right? This was 2-3 years ago now. But yes, we have the money in hand is the good news to have this economic development study and to have a housing study. So right now, this month, April, we are working on those scopes of work to understand what we really need with our experts' opinions and advice and so forth. And we have the money and that we would go out to basically bid and attract consultants that then could, based on that funding through a grant that we received to write a housing study, to do the analysis, to get the data and all the information that we need to then make the informed decisions about economic recovery and housing recovery. So the money is in hand, know that. And, as soon as May, even next month to release that, then solicitation usually takes about 3 months. So let's say, June, July, August, by the end of this summer, if we could have those consultants on board, ready to work. And, typically it's if it's a 12-month schedule or whatnot. So, and I think actually it needs to be because this grant ends August of 2026. So I just have to remember that too. Schedule is important. So we have the money and it will happen. Okay, more to come.
Hi, last time you were here, we were here, I asked you about how many building permits were in the works for Greenville. And can you tell us that or update that and maybe perhaps business permits? Is that possible?
Yeah, so we could get some data on fictitious business licenses would be that data point. I do not know, we have tasked the building department to look holistically back to whether it was, the first permit in 2022 or, to get that data, that number. I don't have it today, but the building department is going through, there is a challenge because in the building department structure and, there's things on paper versus electronic. So it's not as easy as just going to a database and querying that. And how that was tracked, whether it was a wildfire rebuild or not, has gotten better in the building department. And now they're tracking very specifically and have better, programs to do the tracking mechanisms. But to really actually comprehensively go through those permits that were in Greenville, Indian Valley and whatnot, and to look to see if they were in fact wildfire rebuilds. So we have the best available data. So it's taking some time, but we are working on it. Yes.
So Nan, this is on our website and so I started in May of 22 with those documents and unfortunately they're not very good. Nothing against the county. I mean, it's really a bad system, and there's no way to what I've come to is Control F Greenville. And then I just count and I did that for 67 pages and a highlighter, right? Printed it all out, zip, zip, zip. Yeah. And I'm behind right now because I did it and I set this up and I think that approximate 57, I think we're up actually around 63 or 64, right? So I have some catching up to. I got to go back and look at a few more months. And then you got to read between the lines of, is that a dwelling? Is that a residential? Is that a house? Or is it a business address, right? So then doing some sleuthing of just, is it a tax address or is it the actual address of who's filing for it? Is it a construction company? Is it Myers Construction? Is it Indian Valley Construction? Is it owner builder? And then running all that to see where it is. Is it in Crescent Mills? Does it have anything to do with a burn down or is it just somebody building a house, right? And so then you have to kind of sleuth to see, there's one on North Valley Road. Well, they probably weren't affected. Their house didn't burn down. Maybe they're just building a new carport, which it might say carport. That's a win right there. These are the 10 steps of, the general 10 steps of filling out a permit. We have some permits over here too, if you want to build a house. And then just kind of what goes into it. This is super rudimentary and would love to, if there's any critique on how to update this and make it better, let me know. But this is just a general way to look at it. Yes, sir.
Business names. The IVIH is putting out a weekly update on what's going on, and they have numbers there for a fictitious business that's being filed.
Yeah.
You can sign up for an email list. We update the supervisors as the board meetings, and it's on our website.
Yeah, I know Clint Cobley typically at the Board of Supervisors meetings, when he gives his economic development update, typically gives a rundown each month of the fictitious business name filings, I think in Plymouth County wide, but you can definitely get specific with regard to those in Indian Valley.
Those would be new businesses. What about previously existing businesses? Do they have to reapply?
I don't know. That's a good question. You're saying no, Jane's saying no. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if we had to reapply for Indian Valley. Oh, and actually, yeah, I think if you're really curious about Indian Valley, we just looked at this yesterday, actually. The Indian Valley Chamber of Commerce has a list of those are chamber members that are businesses, but they keep an updated list of new businesses that are added as chamber members. And it's not a direct correlation, but you can get an idea of some of the newer or existing businesses that have become members to kind of re-up their status with the chamber. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I want to go back to talking about the implementation plan and actually also the population. I just want to kind of pop in right here. We talk about population and finding out what the baseline is good. and looking at that, but we do want to look at, you know, recovery of the population. Before fire and looking at that and look at are we doing anything about it? What about the full-time people that were living here? And the people were, you know, retired and such that can't move back, is there anything being done to help encourage those people to come back? What about the people who are here part-time, not full-time residents, but still popular? So that's something that should be focused on. I believe, I mean, this is just the intention and just the thinking, and I'm sure you, as planners, you thought of these things, but I'm an engineer, so I gotta say it all. Anyway, just a full disclosure for you. But then also I want to go back to the comment that was made about vacant lots, all right? All right, that's a red flag to me. Gets up, and especially we start talking about starting of the Little League field. Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Starting, you know, Little League starting up and vacant lots. Well, a lot of people see the vacant lots as parking spaces. They're not. There's people property and things that can be done there and such. And I know of a wellhead that was taken out by somebody who just was driving through, took it out. So there's property destruction going on. I'll hold my carotid artery here. But the thing is, it's something that need to be aware of, and a plea to the residents in town, for those residents that are part-time. And I'm not here full-time, everybody knows, but you know, look out for the property owners who aren't here in town. You know, if you're here around permanent, you know, we're putting fences up and such, but if, you know, can help people not say, well, we're just gonna go over, we're just gonna watch that Little League game, or we're just gonna park on this space. It's no state house here, we can park. We should discourage that and vehemently discourage that. As anybody, any organization who's organizing a function should not encourage people to park on lots that don't have houses on.
Okay, thank you. I just want to address a couple, I think I caught a couple questions up front with regard to population. There's something we were just talking about. I know Cass Porter brought this up as well with regard to understanding the baseline. And so we were just talking about this yesterday with regard to determining a population standpoint for what it is that we're talking about with regard to Greenville 1, right? And when we look at census data specifically, how does the federal government pull census data for Greenville? Do they look at the zip code? The zip code extends down North Valley Road into other points. Do they look at a proper area, like a district area that's provided potentially by the, like, you know, sort of like a service area provided by the community services district? If we think, some people will just, in their minds, think of Greenville as just this nexus of Main Street and 89 and just, you know, northeast, south, and west of there. So want to understand what the baseline is first before we start doing a head count to accurately depict that. Like, you know, Forgay Road, for instance, that's Greenville, right? But then how far down to the east do we go? Where do we start and stop? So that's one thing to determine. Another piece is, and if you recall, in October, we had a research team from University of North Texas and the University of Pittsburgh. One of their findings at looking at a variety of disasters is it's very hard to think about comeback, getting people to come back to their community. It's not that it's not impossible, right? It's that it's unlikely, right? It just, they haven't, and that's just a research team, but it's important to think about with that aspect, that it's, people don't always come back because long-term recovery is exactly that. It's long, and these are just the brass tacks, you know, Danny. So it's not like, it's not, again, unlikely as opposed to impossible or two different things, right? The reality, though, is that when people are forced to move from their home, they get a job, they get their kids in school, they buy a new house, etc. And then the opportunity for them to come back, it decreases with each passing year because of life. And that's something that they determined in their study. And that's, you know, if we look, you know, 50 miles that away to Paradise, that's something they're grappling with. And they've instituted a program to entice people to move there as first timers, newcomers. And I know that the Indian Valley Innovation Hub, they're working on that with the La Sierra Chamber Coalition. They've got some ideas that they're trying to get off the ground here soon that generally is pointed at Plumas County as a desirable place back to tourism and recreation, for people to entice people to move to this area. But market analysis, economic development studies, housing studies, those are all things that can help provide data, raw data that can go into what that looks like for people to come back.
Yeah, but it's like this, the housing starts, that question that was brought up, it's still looking at that too, and encouraging people to come back. I hear you what you're saying, we want that, but it just, what sort of indicators, what are we doing, what can we do, and you're enumerating some of
Yeah.
those to help encourage that, and maybe it's not the comeback, but it's still, all right, so there's that vacant lot again,
Yeah.
all right, so can that be utilized? We talked to property owners, are they gonna come back? So, all right, so then let's encourage somebody else to do that, find out, we have property here that people can buy, not to develop a land bank so we can sell it later on, but property for people to buy, move in and be part of the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think Ted's got a question or comment.
Yeah, I guess, a couple comments. So I'm assuming that economic studies are going to include what kind of unique resources we have here that can be utilized to build our economy. But one of the ones that I wanted to point out is we have a very unique resource here that was already acknowledged here today, which is we have this experience and we rebuilt this community in a way that appears to be a potential national model, possibly even a global model. I think it's probably really important for us to consider putting together some kind of training or educational institute that can be used to train other members of other communities so that when they experience issues like this, they have kind of a plan to start with, right? We had to build this up basically from ground zero. We have to thank Sue so much for that. But I could very easily see some kind of certification process that county or city emergency planning personnel could attend and result with some kind of certification that says, hey, we have a plan. And if something happens, break glass, pull this out, and this is how you start repairing your situation. And like one of the incredibly key insights that we found during this process was I'm trying to remember the title. Well, you need disaster case managers. Where are you going to get these people? Oh, it turns out that your social service workers are the people you want to tap for that. A lot of their skill set overlaps. So very quickly you can stand up your disaster case management system. That's a very key insight. And I can see entire industries growing out of that, because once we start building an educational process and a certification process, then we go, oh, there's unmet needs. Like when this happened to us, we lost all kinds of comms. People couldn't get out on the internet, people couldn't call people. And I thought to myself, man, what you really need is you need a shipping container that has Starlink, inside it and has repeaters and Wi-Fi and able to make telephone contact through TCP/IP. And uh-oh, you've lost everything. Drop ship this container in, you can set it up in an hour and your community has communications. Oh, we've got all these people out here trapped in this area and they may have prescription needs. They make prescription vending machines. Why can't you stick that into a shipping container? And now you've got communications, so you can check the prescriptions and disperse the prescriptions to the people who need it. And may have they lost their home, they don't have their blood pressure medicine, they don't have a wide variety of medications. Bam, container gets dropped in, people can get their meds. You lose all your local government. Congratulations, a shipping container. It holds, 5 cubicles or 10 cubicles in one main office, and you drop in what you need in order to modularly expand for your local government. You don't have, a kitchen. People can't eat. Shipping container. And we have the rail line right here, for instance. And so we could ship those containers in here. We could manufacture that stuff. We could ship it out to anybody who needed it. And that's just one idea. There's like a whole slew of things associated with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that it's that type of, iterative process to continue to think about this, and not just, with regard to the lessons learned of, some of the obvious things I think that we can benefit from. And I know you're next week. Yeah. You want to, yeah.
That is a long-term recovery plan project. So one of our 20 projects in the long-term recovery plan is just as you said, to establish a world-class academy to learn about disaster recovery and rebuilding. So, yep, that's a project. Any other comments, questions? Yeah. Yep. Oh, okay. Yeah. You pulled the projects.
Totally different subject, back to the beginning. Sue, have you pursued any further yoga or Tai Chi or something to go with the fitness?
So, most of you know me, so I'm already like going like this. And what I realized and our board realized is that our job first and foremost is to get the organization strong and stable. And then being able to do the two specific programs like the arts and the culinary and the fitness center. That's why we're going to be hiring. Because at the end of the day, we need people who have expertise who will be then going out and hearing from the community, and then it'll be posted on the website. Like you'll go under classes and what classes are being offered and what the time frame is and what the cost is. So we all had to kind of go, okay, wait, we can't be executive directors plus the board. So we're trying to put everything intact with the board, get some of these things up and running. We can get a summer camp going, the pool. Hopefully if we have a pool manager, we'll open. But we're going to wait until we have the experts at the table, and then they'll start to put out what can be offered, and the community can also come to the table and say what they would like to see.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, any other additional questions or comments? Anything for next time and whatever next time will be? Yeah,
I don't know if anybody can answer this, but the dead trees that stick up like great big signposts when you come over the bridge on 89 into town. Is there any plan on getting those trees down by anybody?
I don't have, I have an answer. I don't have a good answer for you right now. So let me talk to a couple of folks. I'll get you a better answer. I'll get everybody a better answer. Depends on public or private property, things determined as a hazard tree or not a hazard tree. But I can find out. I know that the Forest Service.
It's part of the runoff.
So it depends on where, like, those are things definitely with regard to our timber harvesting, with regard to how close it is to a water course and whatnot, and what's permissible for hand thinning as opposed to mechanical. But hazard tree, I think there's nuances when it relates to dead or dying or hazard trees. So let me research that a little bit more and I'll get a better answer for you. It's all here, but it's not so much here. I got to think about it. Anything else? There are no stupid questions. All right, well, I think we're gonna wrap things up for today. Thank you all very much for attending. And I've made a commitment to be a little bit more, provide more frequent updates via email. I realize that I've been delinquent in that, but I'm gonna start to try to do that more on definitely a monthly basis, if not bi-weekly. So hopefully I'll be able to keep folks more up to speed and apprised of what's going on that way. And then, as always, please feel free to contact me if you have just questions that pop up. I'll follow up with you about those other pieces. All right, thank you all very much. Oh, yes, thank you, Marcia. Next meeting will be in June, and then we'll hammer out the date. I know that some people are traveling and graduations and things like that, but we'll have to do it before the meeting. Yeah, we'll have a better date for you. We'll put out a save the date. All right, thank you.
June, you'll be gone. That's fine. I'm actually long. I'll be here for the first meeting in May. Okay.